Good evening. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. The band in front of you is the Trinity Jazz Band. So give a round of applause for them. We're going to start this portion of the concert with a Glenn Miller classic. This is In the Mood. This is going to feature Joel on alto, Clayton on tenor, and Sky on trumpet. It's just so much fun. All right, so the next tune we're going to play for you is another swing tune. This one's called Blue Birdland. This one's kind of a take off of an old, if any of you are familiar with Maynard Ferguson and like the Birdland Club and kind of the Birdland era of jazz. This was a swing tune that was written kind of to be kind of a cooler, swingier way to present kind of this idea. This one's going to feature a few of our students. We have some solos by Eric on trumpet, Matthew on trombone, Daniel on trumpet. We'll get some Joel on sax again, and it's also going to feature our piano player, Amy. Hope you guys enjoy. a really fun one. This is one that we're very fortunate with very talented students, and so we wanted to do a chart that we knew was going to feature one of our sections. And so this next chart will have a feature in our trombone section, which will be really, really great. We put in a lot of work, and we're super proud of how far they've come, and just really what they're going to be able to do with this. The chart's called "It's Not Polite to Point," which, if you think about the title, it's not polite to point. And the students have had fun with that all year, like pointing at each other and saying, it's not polite to point. So, but this one's going to be "It's Not Polite to Point." It's going to feature our trombone section. We have a solo, kind of dueling trombone solo, so I hope you guys enjoy. This is "Not Polite to Point" by Gordon Goodwin. That one was so much fun to put together. And the first day we gave it to him, we told him, hey, because the first thing you need to do, you can't tell students or something that anything's hard, because then they're going to just be like, it's too hard, I can't do this. So it's like, hey, trombones, this will be really fun to play. This will be really fun. And so they took it, they did extra sectionals on their own, things that we didn't ask them to do, they took it upon themselves, and I'm super proud of them. How about another round of applause for Aiden on bass? Alright, our next song is going to be kind of a different style. It's another swing tune, but it's a classic Count Basie. This was arranged by Sammy Nestico. It's a classic tune called Hey Burner. It's going to have some features. We get Aiden on piano and just lots of really good solos. We're going to have Brennan and Joel kind of doing this duet thing, which is really, really fun. So I hope you guys enjoy. This is Hey Burner. Man, that was kind of fun too. This whole program has been so much fun to put together, and the students have worked really hard. Something that we definitely, I want to make sure that we acknowledge is the Wind Symphony, or the Wind Ensemble this year was invited to perform at Music for All. But with that, brought some challenges to our rehearsals, because we only rehearse twice a week, and we do rehearsals after school. But while the Wind Ensemble was gone, it was about 20 days, almost 21 days between rehearsals, because they did their concert before spring break, then they left before spring break, then they were gone for spring break, and then, so it was a while between rehearsals, and it was a little scary. We came back and it was like, do we remember our jazz music? Y'all have performed all your music? But they've done a great job, and we've just, like I said, I cannot stress enough how proud of them we are, and just thankful that they were able to put all this together. It's been really, really great. Our next chart we're going to We're going to do another swing chart for y'all. This one's called Blues and Haas Flat. I hope you guys enjoy this. It's going to be kind of more of a faster shuffle, a little bit more fun. This is going to have some solos. We have trombone, we have Bryce, and then it's going to feature our pianist again, Aiden. again, I want to thank you so much for coming out. We have one more chart for you tonight. This one is What Is Hip? Made popular by, if you're familiar with kind of our older funk groups, this is made famous by Tower of Power. Hope you guys enjoy it. I really want to say a shout out to Mr. Trinity, Ms. Ramos, Mr. Garcia, and Mr. Flores at Brown Culture. Very thankful that the staff can trust myself. Let me introduce myself. My name is Randy Dees, and I work with the jazz band. My colleague, Tyler Smallvik, was unfortunately, he had another gig that got booked, and he just unfortunately couldn't get out of, and so he couldn't be here tonight. But he's been doing rehearsals with us, and we've been doing all this together, and we're all very sad he couldn't be here tonight. And he's also very sad. He's been texting me. He's like, I hate that I'm not there. He's missing it a lot. But so fortunate that the band program allows us to come out and work with the students, and they've been such a pleasure to work with. And so some personal notes, I'm going to college right now, finishing my bachelor's degree, and unfortunately this time next year I'll be student teaching, so I've let the kids know this will actually be the last year I work with them doing the jazz band, and I know that they've been very just kind of uplifting as I've been really sad about that realization, and that they've been great about it. I'm just so thankful. Once again, I'm going to tell y'all again, just so thankful I got to work with y'all, and y'all made this definitely an unforgettable year, and just very happy I'm going into student teaching, but unfortunately I got to work with y'all again just for the last time. So. With that being said, I hope y'all enjoyed this. Is What Is It? Awesome. Thank you all again so much for coming out tonight. Please be safe getting home. God bless.